Good writers make sure that the meaning of each one of their sentences is clear. One common mistake many writers make is to write sentences where the modifier is describing either the wrong word or a missing word in the sentence. Let's practice identifying sentences that contain misplaced or dangling modifiers and learn how to rewrite them. When we write sentences that communicate clearly, our readers are happy, and that means we have done our job well. Before we go any further, let's answer the question, what is a modifier? Another word for modifier is qualifier. It is a word or group of words that describes an element of the sentence. It modifies or changes the meaning of that element. Typically, there are two parts of speech that modify other words in the sentence. Adjectives modify nouns and pronouns, and adverbs modify verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. In other words, the words, phrases, and clauses that function as adjectives or adverbs are the modifiers in the sentence. In this sentence, the word acrobatic is a single word adjective modifying the noun spectacle. Here, the adjective phrase soaring through the air with ease modifies the noun acrobat. And here, the adjective clause, who were seated in the front row, modifies the noun members. It is when these modifiers are placed incorrectly in the sentence that we inadvertently create misplaced or dangling modifiers. You might be wondering how many different types of modifiers we can have in a sentence. Well, here is a list of the different modifiers we might find. While the list may seem long, it is just the last two, the prepositional phrase and the participial phrase, that cause the most trouble when it comes to placing them in the sentence correctly. So many of the sentences we will examine during this lesson will contain them. Fortunately, it is not necessary to remember the grammatical term for the type of modifier you want to fix. But sometimes it is nice to know what words to use when you talk about the different elements of your sentence with someone else. But no, you can still fix sentence problems and become a wonderful writer without knowing all the terms to use. Let's take a brief look at what can happen when we move our modifiers around in the sentence. Let's read these two sentences together and determine what the difference is between them. I almost earned an A in every English class I took in high school. I earned an A in almost every English class I took in high school. Yes, the sentences are exactly the same except for the position of the word almost. In the first sentence, the word almost is an adverb modifying the verb earned. In the second sentence, the word almost is an adverb modifying the adjective every, which is modifying the noun class. The meaning of these sentences is very different. I think we would agree that the student who earned the higher marks in English was the speaker of the second sentence, whereas the speaker of the first sentence didn't quite earn an A in any of his or her English classes. Where we place the modifier almost makes all the difference. While misplaced and dangling modifier problems are very similar, the way we go about fixing them is slightly different, so we will work with them separately. We say a sentence contains a misplaced modifier when the modifier or describing words don't hit their target. Let's look at an example. I saw an automobile accident walking down the street. Wow, I'm confused. Who was walking down the street? I think the participial phrase walking down the street is supposed to be describing the pronoun I in this sentence, don't you? But at the moment, that's not quite clear. This is an example of what we call a misplaced modifier, because the modifier, the participial phrase, is targeting the word accident instead of the word I. In order to fix this, we will reorganize the words so that the modifier is much closer to its target. Let's try this. Walking down the street, I saw an automobile accident. Now the target for the modifier, the pronoun I, immediately follows it, so no confusion is caused. The rule of thumb is to place the modifier as close as possible to its target. We don't want the reader to be confused about what we mean. Let's look at another example. This time you will rewrite the sentence following the steps we just talked about. First, find the problem. Next, reorganize the words in the sentence so the modifier is as close as possible to its target. Then, on your practice sheet, write down your corrected sentence. There may be more than one way to fix it. Select pause. When you are ready to continue, hit play again. First of all, you probably asked yourself the question, where were the baboons? In the assembly? I don't think so. So there is our problem. There are a couple of different approaches you may have taken to correct this sentence. Here is one option. During today's assembly, the speaker told us about running into a family of baboons. The prepositional phrase click during today's assembly is now much closer to the word it is modifying, which is the verb told. The writer's meaning is now clear. Another possible correction is the speaker told us during today's assembly about running into a family of baboons. This time, the prepositional phrase during today's assembly has been placed just after the verb it modifies, told. But is this meaning as clear as it could be? Could my reader come away with the idea that the topic of the assembly was about running into a family of baboons? Well, probably not, because that sounds like a pretty silly topic for an assembly, don't you think? This correction is adequate, but the meaning of our first correction was a bit clearer. Now it is your turn to identify the misplaced modifiers in sentences and use the strategies we just rehearsed to fix them. For each sentence, find the misplaced modifier by finding the modifying word or phrase and its target, the word it should describe. Rearrange the words in the sentence so that the modifier is as close to its target as possible, preferably just before or just after it. Correct sentences 1 through 5. Write the corrected sentences down on your practice sheet. When you have completed this exercise, you can hit play again. When a sentence contains a modifying word, phrase, or clause but doesn't contain a word that can act as a target, we call it a dangling modifier because the modifier dangles freely and has nowhere to go. Let's look at an example. While doing the dishes, a mouse ran across the floor. Yikes, I'm confused. The mouse was doing the dishes? I don't think so. I think someone was doing the dishes, and while they were doing them, they noticed that a mouse ran across the floor. When we have a dangling modifier, it is as if the modifier, in this case the phrase while doing the dishes, is hanging out on a line all by itself without a destination. Let's try this. While doing the dishes, I saw a mouse run across the floor. We added the target I and the verb saw, and we rearranged the rest of the words so that the modifier comes right before its target. Let's look at one more example. Slathering the popcorn with melted butter, the calorie count skyrocketed. This time you fix the sentence, following the steps we just talked about. First, find the problem. Next, add the missing target word and any other words you need in order for the sentence to make sense. Then reorganize the rest of the words in the sentence so the modifier is as close as possible to its target. On your practice sheet, write down your corrected sentence. There will be more than one way to fix it. Select pause. When you are ready to continue, hit play again. First of all, you probably asked yourself the question, who put the butter on the popcorn exactly? The participial phrase slathering the popcorn with melted butter doesn't describe a noun or a pronoun in the sentence like it should. It is hanging out on a line all by itself without a destination. Your next step was to add a target word. Here is the sentence I came up with. Slathering the popcorn with melted butter, we caused the calorie count to skyrocket. I added the target we and the verb caused. I also changed the form of the verb skyrocket and rearranged the rest of the words so that the modifier comes right before its target. You probably wrote down a sentence that was quite similar. Now it is your turn to identify the dangling modifiers in sentences and use the steps we just rehearsed to fix them. For each sentence, find the dangling modifier by finding the modifying word or phrase that is missing a target. Decide what the target word should be and what additional words need to be added for the sentence to make sense. Then rearrange the rest of the words in the sentence so that the modifier is as close to its target as possible. Correct sentences 1 through 5. Write the corrected sentences down on your practice sheet. Now select pause. When you've completed this exercise, you can hit play again. Now you are ready to tackle revising a complete paragraph that contains both misplaced and dangling modifiers. This paragraph contains 4 problem sentences that need to be fixed. Rewrite the paragraph on your practice sheet. Feel free to add words and rearrange words in the sentences to achieve clear meaning. Now select pause. When you have completed this exercise, you can hit play again. So now you know to look for misplaced and dangling modifiers when you edit your writing. You have also learned how to fix them. When you fix modifier problems, you make your writing clear and easy for your reader to understand.